Folks, welcome back to the Mañana No Mas podcast. As you know, we've been bringing a string of guests lately, and it's been from all walks of life. This is no different. I met Chip Webster through a girl named Noemi. Noemi's been sending me some awesome guests, and Chip came up through that listing, and I have no regrets. We did a Break the Ice call last week, and I really felt like this could be someone that brings a message of value to our listeners and viewers. And with that, I'll let Chip introduce himself and give you a little more detail about him.
Well, by way of background, I started, as we talked earlier, my corporate first job was at Sears, but left fairly early on in my career and bounced around some entrepreneurial things. The best thing that happened to me from a career standpoint and actually a personal standpoint was becoming part of the Vistage organization, which is their CEO think tanks and peer groups. So these are groups of CEOs that meet. Some of my members that I started have been around for almost 40 years now. So, I mean, it's not a one and done. It's a very longitudinal study. Took Discount Auto Parts public since you're in the auto parts business. And learned a lot about group dynamics and about working with people from across the political spectrum. Then retired and done a number of things on some nonprofit boards, Tampa Bay Watch, which is a great organization, and began to learn and observe this division. And it was enhanced by my wife and I, when COVID came, we sold our boat. We both retired and did 5 loops of the U.S. All corners from Seattle to San Diego to New Jersey to back in Florida. And we stop at RV parks and we talk to people and, they complain about what's going on. And I'd say, that's interesting. It's our fault. And they'd look at me like I had 2 heads. And I said, this is democracy. We elected these people. We're part of the problem and we are part of the solution. And it goes back to, I've heard you talk earlier in your podcast about culture. There are 2 young fish are swimming along in the ocean, and an old fish swims by and says, how's the water? And one young fish turns to him and says, which water? Well, we are all swimming in our culture, whether we like it or not. And so our culture has become dysfunctional. One of my favorite poets, David White, talks about how the quality of the relationship is driven by the quality of the conversation. And nationally, we're not having a conversation, we're having a food fight. And we're in a very low trust position. There's some studies that Pew did back in the 70s, I'm dating myself. 80% of the people trust in hospitals. It's less than 40% now. Banks, it was like in the 70s or 60%. Now it's in the 20s. So it goes on and on. And a democracy, an organization, a family, a business cannot work in a low trust environment. So it's up to us as citizens, responsible citizens, to work together to rebuild the trust in our country. And that's why I wrote the book, Unity and Service, A Pathway to Responsible Citizenship. Shameless promotion.
Shameless plug. I've authored 2 books published. A third one I didn't publish. I kind of I semi-promoted it, and then I just was like, I don't even like it. Don't you hate when you put so much work into something, you're like, I don't even like it. I can't even do it. And now I'm actually working on the 3rd book that will be published.
Great.
What drove you to write and publish the book?
Well, this is my 3rd book. The first one was philosophical, autobiographical, and poetry. The second one was an exercise of painting poetry, which is a fun thing I did with an artist. But those things gave me the confidence to say, I can write this. And I've been watching this deterioration of our national conversation going on for decades. This is not new. And I just couldn't sit and watch and not at least do something to help turn the tide. We all, as a democracy, is a do-it-ourselves project. We are all responsible for where we are. My observation, one of the observations in traveling the country, is that there's 3 kinds of people that just don't care, take whatever they want, throw the litter out the door, and we're just passing through, who cares? Those are just totally passive. They do the right thing, but they are kind of just bumbling along. And there's people who care, want to leave it better than they found it. Um, My my big, hairy, audacious goal is to rally the people who care, because what I found is that if we get enough people who care, enough people talking about it, the middle ones who kind of just bumble along will come along. The Revolutionary War, as I understand it, it was a third Tories who were loyal to the king, a third people sitting on the fence, and a third of people making it happen. Well,
Yeah.
that's no difference today if we were to use round numbers. So we got to get the first third, then the second third rallied, and then maybe we can turn around. Maybe we can look back and say our democracy survived because we all came together. There's an essay in the book about life cycles of a democracy, and Alexander Tytler in 1750 said democracies last about 200 years. We're pressing edge with 250, and I believe that we, the citizens, can perpetuate it by working together. And there's some wonderful examples of companies reinventing themselves. And if you think about it, we're one big private company. We're all stockholders, and then we all have sweat equity to invest.
Yeah. I was, it's come up a lot in conversation, but it also came up after our icebreaker call. And it's just this weird idea now that I remember growing up and not having a single thought or even a guess as to what my third grade teacher thought politically. If she was married, had a girlfriend, had a boyfriend, rode skateboards, drove a van, like it did. All I knew is I thought she was pretty hot. Same thing in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. I'm 58 years old. We didn't have like a working knowledge of what people that we thought were in leadership positions, raising us, what they thought or and it's bizarre now how everything's just permeated every conversation. I grew up in a town with a lot of blue collar workers hanging out at the VFW, having clam bakes, drinking beers, and smoking cigarettes. Now it's kind of weird that that's how we remember our parents growing up, but that was them hanging out, playing softball, drinking beer, smoking cigarettes.
Right.
I don't remember them arguing and fighting over who was president or, what Carter said on the news. I think we've really devolved quite a bit. Originally, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to have Chip on the show. Maybe he's a little more political than the show usually is. But you hit me with such a message of interactivity within the community and like paying it forward and all that. And it really resonated with some of the things I wrote in my leadership book. Like, if there's a gap in leadership, that's because you were meant to fill that gap. You are naturally called to fill that gap. If you abstain from that calling, the universe hates gaps. So it's going to let someone that's not a natural fit for leadership fill that position. And if that happens layer over layer over layer, we end up with the wrong people in charge.
You are so spot on. I always talk about leadership can never be given. It can only be taken. And you've been around a lot of family businesses, and you've seen Junior or the daughter take over the business and have no idea about leadership and have it cratered. And then you've seen other people whose kids knew what the heck to do and they took it to the next level. Leadership can never be given. It can only be taken. Even if you vote somebody in office, doesn't mean they're a leader.
Yeah. And so when I'm consulting a business, if I'm working with a CEO or a group of leaders in business, I'll typically say a phrase that's real similar to, we've got to get the team to focus on relationships. We've got to get the team to focus on conversations and relationships and not focus on transactions. When you and your staff are focused on transactions, it's creepy and it pushes people away and we lose relationship. But if you focus on relationship, well, then the transactions just kind of happen naturally. And that's kind of a way that we start to build that internal culture that, I look at from a corporate standpoint, but you're talking about culture from a societal standpoint.
Yes.
And so when I think of things like you mentioned the media, you mentioned medical, you mentioned banking, newsflash, I'm on I'm on uh, the less happy side of that equation. Um,
Okay.
so like, don't trust doctors very much. Don't trust big pharma at all. Don't try not to listen to what the media is trying to tell me until I have a chance to look at 3 or 4 different sources. I mean, it really makes you have to be somewhat paranoid. Um, what do you think? What do you think is the first step in the right direction in that category?
Well, I think that the first step is to decide to get off the couch and go outside and volunteer in a community project with a diverse group of people who are committed to a bigger cause. People want to be part of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And by working together with people, that begins to dissolve our differences. That leads to stop dehumanizing people that are different than us politically. It's tragic. I'm sure, I don't know if you've heard this, but several people I know, families, they won't go to a family dinner or Thanksgiving because of politics. That's sad. I've lost friends who have a different political view than I do, and I'm not particularly controversial. But they just, if I don't think the way they think, I'm bad news, and that's kind of the big lie. I think it's driven by our politicians, and it's driven by our press, our media.
Yeah.
That's how they sell the beer. That's how they sell the cars and the expensive pills from big pharma.
So in this category that I think you list is like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you call it like service as a unifier, right? So service as a unifier. I think back to when I first started volunteering. This is a real transparent look into Kurt right here. I thought, I don't want to volunteer with people because I think people are creepy sometimes. I'm just going to work with dogs because dogs unconditionally love you back. So that's where I went. So I went and volunteered at the animal shelter where I lived, and it was
You had to deal with people. Somebody had to let you in the door. Somebody had to be taking care of the dogs when you weren't there.
That's exactly what I was going to get to, Chip.
Sorry.
We started going to like pet adoption events and stuff like that. And so it's one thing to go to the center and walk the dogs. It's another thing to pack them up in a giant van and take them to PetSmart and have 100 people ask if they can pet the puppies. It's a totally different world. And I don't think it's a newsflash to you. It might be to other people, but what you said about that whole spectrum of belief, that whole spectrum of individualism is represented in that volunteer team, right? There's people from every walk of life there. Like, I am a carnivore. I love to eat me some burgers and some brisket. But man, there's a lot of vegans that seem to like dogs. And so I noticed it was one of those things that kind of helped like mesh things together for me. And then I kind of grew from that. Like, now I volunteer at a church with 150 college age kids every Monday night. So it's a different paradigm for sure. But I think just getting out of your comfort zone and saying, how can I add value to something that doesn't personally benefit me materially? I think that's like such a huge step.
I call that national sweat equity. You pay your taxes, that's your financial contribution.
Yeah.
But your time and attention is more valuable. The ripple effect of what you're doing, you will never be able to measure. And it truly breaks down barriers. I don't think the far extremes, left or right, are around that much. They're doing stuff, but it's the middle 70-80% change the culture that are going to change the direction and not tolerate the extremes. We spend so much time trying to have a better past. You can't unbury Wounded Knee, you can't unslave slavery, and you can't uncivil the Civil War. What did we learn from those things, and how can we go forward and make it better and never repeat them? That's what we should focus on.
Yeah, 100%. And to take this like a step further, if someone is currently sitting on the sofa, right? They're a listener, a viewer watching this now, and they're like, well, volunteering might have worked for Kurt, but it's never going to work for me. Promoting volunteerism for Chip sounds great, but it's never going to work for me. I find that once you take it, it's just like going to the gym. Like once you get off the sofa the first couple of times and go and do it, it just becomes a part of you and a very positive part of you.
Not even God can steer a parked car. If you're sitting on the couch, you are a parked car with your engine off.
Yeah.
I watched an interview with Bo Jackson. He was talking about his mentors. He's into mentoring kids. I don't know if you remember Bo, great athlete.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was asked, well, what do you look for in a kid if you're going to mentor them? They have to have gotten off the couch. I'm not going to go in there and get them off the couch. They have to have gotten themselves and out the door.
Yeah.
And, that what you're doing is so important and done in so many different ways. Nobody ever, Air Force General said, nobody ever washed a rent-a-car. Well, once you put that sweat equity into the country and into your community, it's now your community. It's not a rent-a-car. I own this. I own part of this. I have a real concern or a real investment into the future health of the dogs, the kids at church.
Yeah.
Keep on keeping on, man.
I think there's a certain point, and correct me if I'm wrong, because now I'm just clutching for straws, where it becomes quasi addictive. For instance, I'm a coach on the mountain bike team for the kids 5th grade through 12th grade here in Hutchinson, Kansas. My kid was on the team and I thought, well, if I'm going to go to the events, I might as well coach the other kids. But it's, would I have stepped out of that comfort zone if I didn't do the thing at church, if I didn't do the thing with the dogs, if I didn't do the other things? I got to wonder, it's like the more you do, the more you want to do.
Was it habits create destiny? Or actions create habits create destiny. I'm ready to cross over the 80-yard line, and I work out every day, sometimes an hour, sometimes 2 hours. And it's a habit. And I feel pretty darn good. I feel more like I'm 60 than I do like I'm almost 80. Nice. And it's the habit of connection. I believe that one of the things that is hurting us is we've become so disconnected that we don't see others as human, and they don't see you seeing them as human. At the end of this, if you let me read a poem, I'll read it.
You can read a poem.
Okay. But it's all about validating the humanness of each other. And as soon as I don't see you as human, then I can shoot you. Then I can run you down. And then I can say, if you're a D or an R, depending on, we should, what was the guy in, was it Virginia that's running for, I forget what state office, Attorney General. He wanted to shoot his opponents. It's like, this is not healthy.
This is not a healthy way to talk about things. Certainly not when you're going for election.
No.
We're supposed to be kissing babies. Right.
In fact, he talked about shooting the guy's kids, as I understand it too. So kind of the opposite. We're not healthy mentally as a nation. And the only way we're going to turn it around is to turn off the TV, go outside and work with other people on something in the community. Go to Habitat for Humanity. I'm with the Tampa Bay Watch. We go and clean up the shorelines. We make oyster reef balls to restore the shoreline. We teach kids and adults about the bay and do eco tours. That makes everybody better.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to have a season ticket to the Monterey Bay Aquarium when we lived on the West. And it was my favorite place in the world. And I love sea otters. They're my favorite animal. Yeah. So note to the listeners, trivia question, right? What's my favorite mammal? That would be a sea otter. And I would spend hours there, hanging out with the sea otters and doing the thing. And that place runs on volunteerism too. I mean, it's full of people that care about something local and put their time in.
That's a beautiful spot.
Yeah. Yeah. It was phenomenal. So if we were to take this conversation further, so we talked about it's our own fault because we vote this stuff in. And then we talked about apathy in society and how we've devolved, right? Service as a unifier can help restore that. you call for responsible citizenship. That's the phrase you use, right? So civil engagement, voting. What else is falling into that for you? What
Well,
brings?
I say the absolute number one thing is that we have to be committed to our mutual defense, which is both, local crime, international aggression. If we don't go back, there's a chapter in essay in my book, Why Do Tribes Exist? If we don't work on having or peace internally and externally, everything else I talk about is worthless.
Yeah.
I don't care what we do. If there's riots in the street every night, if they're burning down businesses, everything else is off the table.
Well,
So first, go ahead.
I was just going to say, not for nothing, I think we've all received a little bit of a master class on the pathway to peace isn't always so obvious.
No.
Yeah, there's always a different viewpoint or a different way to get to that desired peace. And I think that's where a lot of the conflict internally comes is people just can't wrap their heads around what's happening.
No, and rather than doing something, they just retreat into their silo and talk to people, and they talk about how bad the other side is, or watch one news source talks about how bad the other side is.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy. Critical thinking requires you hearing something and then you checking it out, with very little critical thinking. If you hear about a politician or about an issue and you just accept it, then really qualified to vote. I mean, you get to vote, but you're not qualified.
Yeah.
It's checking it out 2 or 3 other data points. My wife and I were just talking about something that was in the news today. I won't use any specifics because I don't want to start a political debate. But 3 different news outlets reported on the same thing, and one of them just happened to leave out half the facts, so that when you read the story, it was a completely different story.
Yeah.
And that is as much as lying as not, just a sheer lie. So you said, what can we do? One is back to peace, law and order. The second is vote, but vote only if you're willing to take the time to figure out who you should vote for. Only 66% of the people vote for the president last time. Less than 45% vote for the House every 2 years. That means our country is being run by a legislative body that less than half the people vote for. And typical local elections, like 20%. Yeah. Get off the couch. Do your homework. Study. Next is to support an infrastructure so we can do business. You want to get your motorcycles from the dock in San Diego to Denver. We got to have a road. We got to have a truck. We got to, so infrastructure is important. Next is teaching our kids civics and having them understand that it is our country and we're responsible for it. And there's a whole longer list, but those are the most important things.
How much, in your observation, do you feel like the generations have really fluxed? And where I'm going with this is a lot of people in my circles are talking about this younger generation, the 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds, almost seeming to have like a rebound in responsibility and awareness and things, whereas like from Gen X down to that age kind of went a different direction. Are you seeing that from your perspective?
I'm hearing it. I haven't done the study. I haven't really delved into it. I've just been hearing. So I would say it's on the side of interesting hearsay. I think probably that's true because younger people observe older people. And if they're not doing anything, they go, we can do something. And, we take for granted what we have. And a lot of it is because if you read Alexander Tyler's Life Cycles of a Democracy, and then you read like Life Cycles of a Corporation by Ishak Hadizes, which I highly recommend, they really parallel. You started, you start and you have this dream and you're losing money. And if you got the right deal, you start making money. And then all of a sudden, boop, 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 boop. And you're doing really well. And your Sears Roebuck and Company, you build the world's tallest building that has nothing to do with the customer.
Yep.
You go down and fail. One of my favorite stories is Shell Oil. Shell Oil started out as a shell company, taking seashells from the Middle East and taking them to England and selling them because they were valuable and people used them in interior design in the 1800s. Well, they're going back and forth and they started bringing kerosene. And then seashells became unpopular, so they started doing petroleum. So this company completely adapted to the market and was willing to reinvent itself. And as a nation, I think we need to reinvent ourselves as responsible citizens and quit taking this wonderful country for granted.
It's so interesting when you talk about how businesses develop and they either adapt or they fail, right? We all sat, we watched Kmart shut its doors. We watched Sears shut its doors. We watched JCPenney disappear, Abraham and Strauss disappear. And back in our day, these were all stores that you would happily go to and spend your money at. And then they're gone. And then we see some stores that have semi-adapted. And so can you order it online? Can you also pick it up at the store? Can you, right? And we see that has worked. If we could, as a people group, adapt the way the successful businesses adapt to their surroundings, we would be so much better off. As in being able to change our communication, but stay positive and keep going. You know what I mean?
Right. Stop dehumanizing the other people.
Yeah. That's super big stuff.
They're not evil. They're not, people don't agree with me politically. I had lunch with a guy yesterday. Actually, I'm doing a book lunch this weekend. He's a very good friend. We see things different politically. We actually did a book together. That was the paint and poetry thing. He's a great artist. But one of the things that I think my mom taught me this is when you're disagreeing with somebody, ask what are their motives? Are they evil? Or are they just seeing the world through a different lens? I forget who said it. I think it was Churchill. Democracy is a horrible form of government. It's just better than all the rest.
I tend to agree with that. Sometimes we think, how could we make it better? And a lot of people, stress the word democracy when we're really a representative government with the republic and all that stuff. So it's never really it's never a, individual vote, power of the people. It's not that. It's that representative thing, which makes things a little bit different. But it's still amazing
it's a check and balance. And if you think about the genius of the founding fathers, they realized if it was pure democracy, the tyranny of the majority would reign. And we've got guardrails against it. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, you did a better job than I was doing. So that's perfect. So before we move forward, did you have a poem you were going to do or no?
I mean,
because here's the deal, Chip. No one's ever read a poem on the podcast before. So now I'm intrigued.
Well, you have the opportunity to not run this one. So, but you pointed out, if it's really bad, you could just flush it. So this is the poem. It's called Microvalidations. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. English proverb. Microclimates, microbiomes, microaggressions. We live in a microclimate. Microbiomes live in us. Microaggressions are part of life. So what we need more of are microvalidations, microaffirmations. We've become trapped in our silos. We've become contemptuous of those who don't agree with us. They must not be human. Our country, our cities, our friends have become divided. We can't keep distancing ourselves from each other. We must all hang together, or most assuredly we'll hang separately, Benjamin Franklin. Our children, our grandchildren need us to hang together for their future. A healthy democracy requires its citizens to work together to remain free. We need to see our interdependence and break down the barriers that divide us. We need each other. Start with microvalidations. Open the door for someone and say hello. Talk to your neighbors. look people in the eye and acknowledge that they exist, reconnect with each other, affirm the humanness of everyone.
Chip, that was great. We're going to keep it.
Okay.
We're going to keep it. So many things. And I thought about this earlier in our conversation, but I kept my big yap shut, and now I'm going to say it. My wife and I, every time that we've moved to a new neighborhood, we've made it a point to meet all the neighbors. At one of them, in New Mexico, we moved to Albuquerque, and we were there for 2 weeks, set up the whole house, and then we put invitations on every door on our street and said, hey, next Thursday, we're going to have a coffee meet and greet just to introduce ourselves to the neighborhood. You're welcome to bring something, and if you don't, that's fine too. Just come and say hi. That was the eye-opener, Chip, because the neighbors came. Everyone came. Everyone that got an invitation came to our house and had coffee with us. And during that experience, we recognized that neighbors that lived next door to each other for 7 years had never introduced themselves to each other. They never knew who one person was. They didn't know the people across the street. They drove up, they drove in their garages, they pushed the button, they went in the living room. That was it. And Albuquerque wasn't a horrible place where we lived. We lived in a really nice little subdivision. But I think that was almost the poison of it, was that it was a nice little subdivision. You could pull in on a hot summer day, push a button, drive in, push a button, go in the air conditioning. Nobody ever talked to each other in the neighborhood. We had that event, and all of a sudden, they're meeting at the park for barbecues. We're doing all kinds of things. And we've kept that now as like our mark. Like now, whenever we go somewhere, we meet all the neighbors, we have a short little event, and just to get to know people. And we just moved here in Hutchinson, Kansas. And like the guy that runs the pool company lives next door. Sam over here says, hey, the neighbors probably told you I'm crazy. And I'm like, well, they didn't tell me you're crazy, but now I'm interested. The guy across the street's retired, and he's the guy that works with the Kiwanis or whatever, and he puts the flags in everybody's front yard on the holiday. I mean, it's like I know the whole neighborhood, but we've only been here less than a year.
Well, there's a study done by Allstate Insurance. You can look it up. It's called the Trust Tipping Point. Something like 27% or 30% of people don't know their neighbors. And it's your fault.
Yes. 100% your fault.
And what you did in Albuquerque is the ripple effect of that, I can guarantee you, Kurt, is gone far beyond Albuquerque.
I would hope. I would like to think we're still friends with people, like still like Facebook connected and whatever, you know.
Right.
The thing that you mentioned, service is a unifier.
Yeah.
It's really been hitting me hard lately. I don't know if it's my recent birthday or what, but like people that we mentored, my wife and I used to mentor a group of kids together, husband and wife team mentoring these kids. They were 5th and 6th grade at the time. Chip, they're married, they're having kids, they're having families of their own. And every now and then I get an email. Every now and then I get a Facebook message. Every now and then I get just a something, you know, and it's like, hey, you probably don't remember this, but on one of those nights you said, you know, and then my little girl said, and it's just all the pieces fall together and you go, you know, the work is, I did the work. Like I did the work. And I know it's weird to pat yourself on the back, but it's just a reaffirmation that when you invest in other people, it can't come back void.
I think it's also an invitation for others to do the same thing.
Yeah, it's tremendous. I can't recommend it enough. I think after speaking to you and then looking at some of the links that Noemi had sent to me and going through some of your stuff, it just kind of recycled or regurgitated some of those thoughts and feelings of like, I worked with these kids and now they're doing this. I worked with these kids. You know, what one kid had what I consider were horrible parents. The kid was just not loved. He was flat out told, we love the dog more than we love you. Now, a successful military career, his own family, multiple children, a loving wife, like that doesn't happen by accident. That happens because other people fill the gap when there's that gap I mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Chip, man, I love having this chat. What?
I said you're a gem. I appreciate you.
Well, you're just making me think of it more. That's all. It's
Mm.
you just live the life that you're given, and then hopefully you do the best with the skills you got. But it's really introspective having met and talked to you. I hope that people listening and viewing, take a moment, just a quiet moment to go through some stuff. But I know that I've got the unityandservice.org website, and I know that you communicate on LinkedIn. Do you like people to reach out through LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn, or they can reach me at chip@unityandservice.org. Either one.
Nice.
And
Link.
through my website, you can also reach out to me. And buy the book, Unity and Service. It's on Amazon. And write something. Do a review if you think it's valuable. People, I'm trying to get the word. This is the beginning. This Saturday is my book launch, even though it's been out for a minute. People helping me pushing that boulder till we get to downhill, and it'll be like a snowball.
Awesome. Well, I thank you so much for coming to the show. I want to respect your time as well. Is there any last minute tidbits or anything you want to share? Let's put it this way. If you had 30 seconds to make an impression on a new listener or follower in person, what would you say?
You have the ability and the power to change the direction of this country, and go out and validate people, open the door for somebody, say hello, smile at them, and recognize other people's humanness. There's a ripple effect.
It's fantastic. Folks, this has been Chip Webster. I can't encourage you enough to go follow him on LinkedIn, buy the book, go to Amazon, fill in the review. When it comes to this show, like, share, follow, subscribe, all those fun things I should have said at the beginning of the show. And we'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.